This video is for you if you're thinking about becoming an assessor or an inclusion advisor for the South East's Regional Talent Board. I'm Fiona Rodden and I'm the programme lead for the South East Regional Talent Board. And the assessment centres I'm talking about are the ones that are running at the end of March in 2020. We're looking for a range of different kinds of assessors. I'm going to talk to you about why we're trying to do this briefly, what the assessing or inclusion advising involves, who we're looking for, and then what you need to do. I'm not going to talk about the nomination process. There is another video that you can watch that talks a bit more in depth about the process of nominating or nominating yourself. But this video might also be helpful just to get a flavour of what the assessment centre involves for people who are thinking about being nominated as well. So the first round, the nomination window is open in December and January for assessment centres in March, and we are looking to form a talent pool of people that are aspiring to be Chief People Officers or HRDs and Chief Operating Officers. And we're going out for both people who would consider themselves to be ready now and their next move within the next 6 to 12 months is likely to be a director level post, but also for people who, for any number of reasons, are not ready at the moment. The people who are not quite ready will be hopefully going into our future pool, and this video is really focused on the ready now pool. So the reason that this process is being set up is to try and identify a pool of leaders across the South East who would be ready with support to step into this director level post, and we are using assessment centres as a way of robustly and transparently, fairly assessing them independently against a shared success profile that's held nationally. So the intention being that we will hold a talent pool within the region in the South East, but that can be shared nationally with the other regions to identify good moves for people, both for the organisation's performance and stability, as well as their own career development. The assessment centre is a 2-hour interview. It's 2 different interviews, a competency-based interview and a situational judgment interview, and they are both designed by an independent organisation that is an expert in the field, along with a number of system leaders within the NHS. We have a success profile that has been quite thoroughly tested against existing highly performing executives, and this success profile is not profession specific. It is to identify what does a good executive look like across the board. The assessment centre is 2 hours, so it's made up of these 2 interviews, and at the end of this process the person will be scored against evidence that they have provided through pre-work and then these interviews to determine how they perform against these criteria. So in the other video I talk a bit about why we're doing this as a whole approach, so please do click up on that video and have a look at that. But in terms of why we're using this specific assessment process, it's a balance between having enough of a rigorous and transparent and consistent approach that we can share talent nationally, that's done to a degree that organisations who will be employing at the other end have confidence in the rigour with which we are saying that these people are ready, balanced with needing to carefully manage the resource that we have and knowing that that's limited. So while in an ideal world we would be looking at a much more thorough assessment centre process, we also recognise that this is not a recruitment process, it is assessment of talent, and it can't replace the need for your own recruitment processes, but it should be rigorous enough to identify that people are not just ready to perform an existing director post, but they are also matching the values and the behaviours that we would expect of our future leaders. Do have a look at the success profile in the information pack, and in fact all of the information that I'm going to talk about is outlined in our information pack on the website, that we'll put a link to at the end of this video. Have a look at the success profile. It lists and details the competencies that we're looking for, and you can see in that the key thing here is it is not about having a cookie cutter executive director. Each person will have their own unique combination of strengths and development areas according to these competencies, and different roles will require different competencies as a part of this. So have a look at those competencies. You can see what we're broadly looking for. They've been widely regarded by senior leaders in the NHS that this is a consistent and fair and inclusive set of competencies that determine what leadership will look like. So why would you want to become an assessor or an inclusion advisor? Well, I think that there are 4 key reasons. First of all, it's part of paying something back to the wider system, so that you're not just caught within your own organisational boundaries, but thinking about how we are working to contribute to the wider system of health and care, and the talent management processes as fits outside of our own organisational silo. Secondly, it's about having visibility of the upcoming talent so that you're thinking about it for your own recruitment, and to enable them to network with existing directors and executive and non-executive. It's also about how we own our talent regionally, rather than this being an external process. But we want to ensure that our assessors and inclusion advisors are people from within our own systems, so that this is by the region for the region. And finally, it's hopefully a useful experience to reflect on our own recruitment processes within organisations, experience an assessment centre that has been set up by global experts in the field, and hopefully to take something away. I was at an assessment centre not long ago and chatting to a chair of a trust who was a support assessor who said, I think I would have thought differently about some of the appointments I had made, and made a few different, not necessarily decisions, but asked different questions. And for me, that's a big part of what this is about. So it's enabling us to come together as a region and develop our own best practice in executive appointments particularly. So what are the roles of the assessors and the inclusion advisor? Well, first of all, we have 4 roles. We have the technical assessor, the leader assessor, the support assessor, and the inclusion advisor. So collectively, the 3 assessors score the candidate on the pre-work and the competency interview and the situational judgment interview, and deem whether this candidate is ready now. Within those assessors, the technical assessor has the most kind of focused role in terms of chairing the interview. They ensure that the panel are sticking to the evidence when they're having the evidence-based conversation around the competencies. They have the closest relationship probably in understanding those competencies and the nuance in some of the language. They typically would be an HR director and very experienced in competency-based interviews, very experienced in exec level appointments. They undertake the most intense training by the nature of the fact of their role is in kind of holding the process. They will have training not just in how to have, the detail of these competencies, but in how to chair that conversation, and also receive training in the psychometric that we're using in this process, which is the talent queue tool, and how to use some of that information in getting under the candidate's information. So obviously it's a lot more in depth than a normal competency-based interview in a recruitment process. The leader assessor is typically a chief exec or an accountable officer, and they have a very thorough understanding of the context of board challenges. So they will chair the situational judgment interview and ask those questions. And this is where the candidates will have done some pre-work to prepare for that interview. And they will also have some training, but it will be online and at your convenience. So that should make it a bit more manageable. The support assessor doesn't chair either of the interviews, and actually that gives them a certain freedom to really focus on the process, the questions that are being asked, and the evidence, quite crucially, that is being shared by the candidate. They will be invited to ask any additional questions or gaps that they feel have been missed at points of the interview, though they won't have scheduled questions, if you see what I mean. But all of those three assessors will have an equal standing in the conversation at the end of the assessment centre to score the candidates and deem their readiness. The inclusion advisor isn't part of the formal panel, and they act as an observer of the panel. So they are essentially judging the panel, not the candidate. And they are there to help us ensure that we are free from bias. And we all know that bias exists in the recruitment process, and all of our assessors will undertake some conscious decision-making training. Yet it is, I think, useful to have that dedicated focus within the room. So they won't, I'm hoping, won't be needed to intervene in the moment should anything untoward happen, but really they're there to offer reflection and consideration and ensure that that discussion is as free from bias as we can make it. So what's the time commitment? Well, that depends on which role you want to do. The technical assessor is the more in-depth role at the assessment centre, and as you're chairing it, it does require more in-depth understanding of the competencies, the process, how to drill into the evidence, and also in using the psychometric tool Talent Q. So that requires 3 days of non-consecutive face-to-face training. The support and leader assessors do a far more abridged version of that, and so that is around about an hour's online training that can be done at your convenience. All of the assessors undertake around about an hour's conscious decision making module, which you may have done if you're making a nomination as well. The assessment centre is 2 days, so that's full time, so you're thinking it's around about 9:30, 9 o'clock until 4 p.m. The timings vary slightly depending on the day. Over that time you'll see 3 candidates and then have a calibration session, which is to make sure that we're all scoring the same or making adjustments where that hasn't been the case, and ensuring the process is fair as well. There is a pre-call for assessors before the assessment centre, and that's to review the pre-work that the candidate has done, demonstrating their evidence against the competencies, and that enables a conversation between the assessors to drill down into what's been provided and target any questions into areas where they think there might be a development area, or where the psychometric tool identifies a potential gap for the candidate as well. After the assessment centre, the technical assessor will have an in-depth feedback call for around an hour, but that will involve writing a report so that it is all completely evidence-based on the discussions that took place after the assessment centre. And I think that happens not too far after the assessment centre, but before that, the leader assessor who chaired the situational judgment interview will have a quick call with the candidate to let them know of the outcome of the interview. We would hope that all assessors would undertake at least 2 assessment centres per year, and that's to ensure that you stay fresh, that you are having a variety of different experiences with different candidates. Just ensures, like with any professional practice, that you're up to date and that you are experienced in what you're doing. The inclusion advisor is a quite a different role, so they're not interviewing the candidate, as I said, they are observing the panel. They will undertake a full day's workshop just to ensure that they have the foundation of knowledge of diversity and inclusion awareness already, though the likelihood is they're coming from a role where this is part of their job, but it's just to ensure that that foundation is clear, that we're all coming on the same page. And primarily it's about how to identify which issues need to be raised immediately, which need to be reflected back to the panel, and the best way of doing that. So they will have a lot of time focusing on the potential bias issues that just generally do occur in the recruitment process, even with the best will of in the world, and how to appreciatively and supportively manage that to a more inclusive process. So what should you do if you would either like to be an assessor or an inclusion advisor, or just want to find out more? First of all, please do look at the information pack on our website. It goes into a lot more depth in why we're doing it, what we're doing it, how does it fit into the context across the country. But if in doubt, just email us at aspiretogether.southeast@nhs.net. But do remember, we're looking for a bank of assessors across the different roles. So even if the dates of the 25th and the 26th of March are not good for you, please do let us know that you're interested, and we will keep you in the loop for the next round of assessment centres. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and I look forward to speaking to you soon.